everyone. So today let us speak about the thinning of the middle class. So one of the great things that our country prides itself on is that we have a middle class, right? So we have people who aren't the elite and who aren't the peasants, right? We've moved past, or we believe ourselves to have moved past this pyramid structure where it's the elite at the top, and then it's all the peasants, servants, slaves, whatever you want to call them, at the bottom of the pyramid, where they belong, goddammit, right? That's where they belong. So, the middle class kind of shakes all of that up because it gives us, what the middle class really does is it gives us mobility from the lower class to the upper class, right? That's what the middle class is for. The middle class is so that the poor people have somewhere to go besides just like upper class. It goes from poor to upper class. Like, how do you do that besides marrying rich? Which is really hard because who's going to approve of, who's going to approve of you marrying someone who's super poor if you're super rich? Only in fairy tales. So, how is the thinning of the middle class being done, and why is it being done? So, as everyone may already know, or should know if they went to public high school, or any high school at all, is that the 90%, so 90% of the world's resources, and therefore wealth, is controlled by the top, it's either the top 1% or the top 10%. The point is, the top 1% of society, the billionaires, the millionaires, and we're not talking about like celebrities, we're talking about people who have had this money in their family for generations and generations and generations and generations, and they've stayed at that 1%. They've stayed at that elite percent just because of where they were born, right? And that's not the American way. The American way isn't you're born into money and then you pass that money on to your family and don't invest it in the economy and you just keep that wealth there. Okay, the American way is that you start out at the bottom, you start at the lower classes, and then you use the middle class as this grease, this kind of grease to get to the upper classes. Well, that's all going away now. And I'll talk about why that is later, but first I want to talk about how it's being done. So it's being done in a couple of different ways. The first way, and the most major way that it's being done, sorry, my hair is all wet and it just feels gross. Okay, so the first major way that it's being done is student debt. So people may be like, okay, well, finally, poor people can go to college. What's wrong with that? Okay, before you get off of your high horse for one goddamn second and just let me talk, okay? Is that going to be a problem? So, let's say you start off in the lower classes, right? You start off, let's say your dad's a mailman, your mom's a waitress, you're working class, lower class, whatever you want to call it, use the non-PC, PC word, doesn't matter. It means the exact same goddamn thing, right? So let's say you start off there, and then you do good in school, and then you get all this need-based financial aid, and you're pretty smart, so you get some scholarships too for being smart, and for having need, meaning you're poor. That's what having need-based financial aid means. It means that you're poor, and they give you more money because of it, because they want you to rise up in the ranks of society. So let's say you do all of that, and you rise up in the ranks of society, you reach the middle class, right? You started at the bottom, now you're in the middle, you're almost at the top. You started at the bottom, now you're in the middle. Now you've reached the middle class. Okay, so let's say that, you work hard, whatever, maybe you reach the upper middle class, and you're making 150K a year. Maybe not super, super rich. I mean, you're definitely not anywhere near the 1%, not even the top 10% of the world or even of our country. But you've reached the middle class, which is definitely an accomplishment. So now, how exactly are they going to thin you out and make sure you don't get too high up? Make sure you don't get too much money. Make sure you don't get that wealth, right? That you deserve. How are they going to make sure of that? With student debt. Well, what student debt? You say, I already paid all my student debt off. Good job. But guess who didn't? Your children, right? So you have these children. And now you have to co-sign all of their loans. Because if you don't want to co-sign their loans, then you have to wait until they're 25 to send them to college. So you're going to co-sign all of their loans. And let's say, maybe they go out of state and you're going to end up spending $100,000 in loans on this one child. So you may not even be able to afford for any of your other kids to go out of state unless they have major scholarships. Because if you go out of state to a state college, chances are you're going to get you're gonna acquire a ton of debt, right? It's kind of become this inevitable thing in American society now where young people start off their lives just loaded in debt unless A, they were either born poor, or B, they were either born super rich, right? So if you're not born super rich or super poor and you're born right in the middle, you're gonna get a lot of debt. You're gonna get a lot of debt, and it's gonna hold you back, and it's gonna make you a slave to our money, and you're gonna have to work. And you're going to have to do things that maybe you don't want to do. And you're going to have this big chain around your neck, right? You're going to have this big chain around your neck dragging you down because you have all this debt that you have to pay off. And your parents also have to front some of that debt. It's not just you. Now your parents have to front it, right? So let's say that, speaking from the point of view of the person that started off poor and now they made it to the middle. And now they have a kid, and they're co-signing on their loans, and now the parent's going to be $100,000, $40,000, $50,000, even $20,000 is so much money, and they're going to be in that amount of debt, right? So now, instead of being able to move to the upper classes, now you've locked yourself back down in the middle classes because you have all this debt, you have all of these things that you owe, because you're not free, you are a debtor, right? So that's how they got you. And then, some people are going to say, okay, well, what if I just didn't have kids? Thinning out the middle class, my friend. Excuse me. Thinning out the middle class. You reach the middle class from the bottom, you didn't have kids. You're not going to carry on that legacy. There's going to be no one left in the middle class. So eventually, as people stop having kids, and as people continue to acquire massive amounts of debt, the middle class is going to get thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner. And then it's going to cease to exist. And we're going to go back to the historical model that we've always been in this world, which is elites and the peasants. But they're not really peasants anymore. Because peasants is kind of like a cute little word. Oh, look at the little peasants. Blah, 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 blah. Right now, it's not peasants anymore. They're not even servants anymore. They've become slaves.